anyway, so I got it and I liked it and I listened to it, but I still didn't get it yet. And it just so happens to be, I was, back in my small town, and I was getting real tired of what I would hear then and in those days on the radio. And it was just all it was the same. And then I happened to be one night, I was at my parents' house and I caught the Born to Run official video. I think they were running it on Entertainment Tonight or something like that. And I got to see a clip of that great, I don't know if I'm sure you've seen that video. It's phenomenal from that, and it captures the, footage from all over the world on that tour. And that was like a spark to me. So then I was like, I need to go re-examine. And then I started listening to everything that I had on hand, and then I got it. And I must have worn Darkness on the Edge of Town out because it resonated to me at that time. Here I was in a small town and I felt like, oh, what am I going to do? Anyway, so that's kind of what it was, that spark that changed everything. And that's when I decided to join the Navy, and it really, when I say life changing, I mean it really was.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Set Listing Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson. Joining me today, Val Carroll. We've already had a fun little conversation about appropriate languages. So who knows what we'll get this time. Val, welcome to the show.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am from South Texas. I grew up in a small town about 45 minutes south of San Antonio, and we were exactly 100 miles from Laredo. So off of 35 between the two. And, I've been into music since as long as I can, as I can remember as a kid. And I had an older brother who was, and I'm the youngest. I had an older brother and a sister my brother was more into music than my sister, although she was into music as well. But he started the album collection, and was on the Columbia, whatever you call that. You could buy 10 records for like 99 cents or whatever. Anyway, so then that was how I got into music. Anyway, and then after high school, I tried college and it wasn't working for me, and ended up back in my hometown, and then I decided to enlist in the Navy, and then I got my medical training then, and became a hospital corpsman in the Navy, and was actually really spent more time with the Marine Corps. I was a field medic with them, and then when I got out, I've just transitioned into nursing and been doing that ever since. And been a huge Springsteen fan my story's probably a little different there, but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
I know you have a format you follow.
Well, actually, I'm more concerned about good stories than I am a format. So don't ever worry about going on, Val.
All right.
Why the Navy?
Well, my dad had been in the Navy. And I guess if I had a branch to choose, that was just going to be the one I did, mainly because that was what my dad had, that was the branch he'd been in. He was in the Korean War. And so that was, I guess, the one that appealed to me the most. And when I did my testing and everything, here again, this was post high school by a few years, I went and took the ASVAB test that you take. And anyway, one of the one of the places I scored in, that was one of the options. And then I thought, as a Boy Scout as a kid, I really enjoyed the first aid, CPR, and all that kind of stuff. So I thought, what, that's a good field, because then post Navy, provide great training, and post Navy, then, there's a field to go into, and it's worked out.
Yeah. How long have you been in the medical field for that?
Well, counting my Navy experience, since 1988, 89.
So 30
finished
years
my
plus.
training in 89. Right. And then, and then after, I went reserves, and then in that time I started working at a dialysis facility, and like I said, the rest I've just been, now I'm involved. Well, I was involved in home health, but now I'm starting more of a management thing, starting in early May, 1st of May.
Val, how did COVID affect you as a medical professional?
Well,
I mean, I don't want to dwell too long, but that was a scary time, and
absolutely,
a lot of people,
absolutely.
I mean, I'm not unique in admiring all the risks that you and your fellow brethren, in the medical field risked.
Right. Well, I got to say, on my end, with what I was doing compared to the folks in the hospitals, those are the folks that really had it rough. And compared to what I was doing, was nothing, absolutely nothing. Just busy, it just changed kind of the way things were done. But yeah, no, the folks that were the hands-on folks, and that were in the hospitals and direct contact folks, those are the ones that really, I salute them myself. I mean, they're the ones that really have really been under the duress, and then everything got so politicized, and it just, that extra stress thrown on top of that, it's nerve-wracking, to say the least.
So give me 3 minutes, listeners, and if you want to jump ahead, you can. But I'd love to hear your opinion, Val. And this is, if you don't want to talk about it, you don't. Why do you feel that seems to be, we have a disease, we have a vaccine, became so controversial? I mean, to my mind, it just frustrates the hell out of me, because I'll be on a little soapbox here. I had to bring proof of my son's vaccinations for him to play Little League, to go to school. When we went to the doctor's like, okay, it's time for these vaccinations. She's like, oh, crap. Now he's going to be, we tried to go to the doctor sometimes when you wouldn't get shot, so he didn't, put that thing together. Oh, I'm at my pediatrician's, or Dr. Sharon, I'm going to get a shot. But it was just what we did. What do you think?
It's pretty simple to me. I really believe that the way COVID was handled in the very beginning was, there was zero. I mean, the decisions made prior administration were, they missteps from the very beginning. And then it became a matter, anti-mask. And then, of course, if you were anti-mask and didn't want to do things to help the general community that you are part of, and you looked at as that, like someone's trying to repress you, naturally, you're not going to want to do a vaccine either, especially when you have so many on one side. And it's obviously it's going to be the side that you believe in. You're going to take that over any science medical professionals that are telling you and can explain to you why and how. But oh no, you don't believe them. You think they're part of a conspiracy to keep you down. And so that in a nutshell, that's really why. And then I'm on Twitter. I don't really do any other social media. I got off Facebook years ago, because the reason I'd gotten on Facebook was to keep up with old friends, classmates, fellow nursing school classmates and family. And then I couldn't be on Facebook for 2 minutes and not be bombarded with someone's political opinion. And I never shared a political opinion while I was on Facebook. Never. That wasn't why I was there. So I was like, forget this. I'm not doing this anymore. So I got off of Facebook in 2015, I believe. Okay. And have been off of it ever since. And then Twitter, I enjoy it, but sometimes it comes a little overwhelming as well, because there's so many trolls, and there's so much, misinformation that still to this day gets put out on Twitter as well, even though they've tried a little harder. Like I said, sometimes I have to step away from Twitter for a while. That being said, in a nutshell, it was really the politicization, like I was saying earlier, that's what's led to everything. And if everything would have been handled, if the message would have been given from the start, how dangerous this thing was, because the prior administration knew how dangerous it was. And if they would have taken the steps and listened to the people that could have told them what to do, I wouldn't have liked this, but the former guy would have probably won in a landslide, re-election in a landslide, but he couldn't do that. His ego was too big. Yeah. So he had to, he didn't listen to anybody. And they started, we're only going to take care of the red states. And, it just became, it was a nightmare. It was an absolute, and now the medical people are considered part of the enemy. And it's just like, no, that's not how this works. Yeah. That's not how this works at all. Yeah. And so it's just, and then now living in Texas, oh my goodness. I used to be so proud to be a Texan, and now I find myself being embarrassed too often than I am proud anymore. And that's a shame. And I've considered moving to New Mexico because of the ridiculousness.
Linda talked about that, my wife, sometimes about, and we grew up in Louisiana, but we moved to Texas in '86. I live in Dallas. I'm proud to be from Texas, and you're right. As you go forward to it, you go, man, just really? So we'll get off that, though. Okay. We could spend a whole hour just talking about absolutely. That, right? Absolutely.
If you ever want to talk about that, I'm your man. I will talk to you about that for hours. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. I may book you. We may get another time, and I'll do a special Patreon only episode, so that my 10 or 12 people that kick in a couple of bucks a month for me to hear you and I rant about our two senators. Sure. And
absolutely. Yes. I don't know who's the bigger embarrassment, our senators or our governor, and a lieutenant governor and attorney general. They're all bottom of the barrel.
Yeah. And then one last comment, my congressman is one of the 5 that our former president, endorsed for re-election. I'm like, if I was one of them, I would not want his, right. But they do. They just love it. I know. Still at that cult. Yeah. Yep. All right.
Yeah, and that's what it is. Really, that's what it is.
It is. All right. So you've already shared one of the things that I always like that is a running theme. By the way, listeners, we're back on music. If you went away for a few minutes, I understand. Sorry. As I told Val before we get, tangents are all about what this podcast is. Okay. I have found a theme that siblings come up. Either you're the oldest and you influence your younger siblings, or you're a younger sibling and you're either influenced, either embracing their music, or sometimes you're the rebel, right? If you're the younger, like they may be into grunge, so you grab reggae or classic rock or something. So talk to me. Growing up, what kind of music did your family listen to?
Well, I was fortunate, some folks, growing up, their folks didn't really care that much, didn't really have an opinion on one way or another. And my folks were both into music. They both had seen Elvis in San Antonio back in the 50s. They went to one of his shows. And so now that being said, my dad, he was a working cowboy, and so he always, his influence, I mean, he always pretty much was straight country, and I'm talking old school country, your Merle Haggards, your Hank Williams, so we had, and I remember the earliest album collections. I remember, as a kid. That being said, I remember the Ray Charles Modern Sounds and Country Western Music we had as an album. We had Johnny Horton, we had Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass, and then of course a lot of your classic country. And then as we got older, then my brother started getting into music, and this was early '70s when he joined that record
Columbia
club
Record
thing.
Club. Yep.
Yes, and then so at that point, we had new music come. He had new albums coming in all the time, and mainly it was everything from. Well, he actually got Born to Run. I remember as an 11-year-old when Born to Run had come out and being fascinated by the album cover. But I appreciated the songs that were on that, but I wouldn't say I was just like, yeah, I wasn't like immediately a Bruce fan. I was, influenced by, top 40 radio, and, back then FM wasn't really a thing yet. It was still AM.
When did you graduate from high school, Val? Not
1982.
Okay, so I was 77, so I'm a few years older than you, but we're kind of that era, right? Same thing,
Absolutely.
Casey Kasem's Top 40 that
Sure.
you're listened to on Sunday when you get home from church,
Yes.
right? I'd be in my room, with the little AM radio with listening to Casey Kasem, and so yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so listening, and then as of course, and his tastes were fairly varied. I remember in that collection having songs in the key of life, ELO stuff, Neil Young, Chicago, of course, like I said, I already mentioned Bruce, Aerosmith. He was pretty little, he had a pretty good little broad palette there. And my sister was more into your Linda Ronstadt, and of course, in Motown, the Supremes. That was kind of her thing, and I liked all that too. Anyway, so my taste developed. I had pretty broad taste. Now, as I got older, it changed. I discovered Kiss, and I loved Kiss as a kid. And then as I started getting into junior high or middle school, depending on where you're from. If you're from where I'm from, it was junior high. I know most of the country's middle school. Anyway, then I started kind of gearing more towards hard rock. And we had a radio station, like one of the first FM stations that we could pick up down in Pearsall was 99.5 Kiss FM. And they were mainly your hard rock station. Now, they would play Bruce occasionally, but it was mainly your Van Halen's, who I loved. And it was, the Cars when they came out, and then all the hard rock stuff of that era, and a lot of great albums in the late '70s really came out, and then punk, the Ramones and Clash and all that. So that's kind of where I originally started. And I can remember, my brother had Darkness on the Edge of Town, and then got The River, and I remember he went and saw Bruce on the River tour. I was still at that time, I think I was a sophomore when The River came out.
Yeah.
And so I really wasn't, and I wasn't going to go to a concert in Austin for sure, but I went to some concerts in San Antonio. But Bruce, after Darkness tour, he never played San Antonio. He has not played San Antonio again. He did it that one tour, and I don't think they sold that well. And, I don't believe they sold out. So I believe that in Austin, they always had a huge crowd. And so he's pretty much bypassed San Antonio, and he'll play Austin if he comes this far south.
Yeah. He tends to, I guess there's not a big enough following for him to do, the Dallas, Houston, Austin, right? Like, not even thinking San Antonio, but you would think, but no, he'll do Houston or he'll do Dallas. He won't do both of them.
Right.
And I guess that the thought is that, and it does, the past couple of times he went to Houston, we drove down from Dallas to attend him. All right. So a couple things I've got to tell you. One, we may be spiritual twins because I can remember the is it Whipped Cream and Other Delights, where it is that Herbert, that album that spoke to me as a young man. That album, it is a very beautiful woman, covered in whipped cream. I remember seeing that album and stirring things in me that I did not know what were about. And I do remember, in fact, a few years ago, I went back and re-explored that Modern Sounds in Country Western, and just phenomenal. An amazing album.
Like I said, it's one of those. I remember my parents wearing out and knowing it as a small kid, and knowing the songs and just remember that that album. And so and then that's another thing. Back in those days, you didn't have access to music everywhere, so you were so much more influenced by what was on the radio.
You really were.
And so that was kind of how I that's how I was. And then so that influenced the records I bought.
Another interesting thing, Val, at least to me, is when I was listening, we were watching a few years ago the Ken Burns country music documentary.
I saw that.
I think really one of his best. And I think partly because, as he said, instead of having historians tell the story, he had other musicians tell the story, because as he was filming it, they were telling the same stories that the historians were. But when he talked about that, Ray Charles, when he had creative freedom, the first thing he did is do a country music album, which is amazing. So I went through a phase in the late when I like 75, 76, a big Kiss fan. Last year they came to Fort Worth and I went to see them for the first time. The 17-year-old Jesse was just ecstatic. It was so much fun. So I love all your experiences, but you've casually mentioned your brother being Bruce. When did you what was your road to Damascus moment where all of a sudden you went, oh, wait a minute, this guy?
Yes.
Can you remember what it is? And
absolutely.
What about it?
It's as vivid as if it happened yesterday. I always appreciated his, the songs that I would get to hear, but I didn't get it yet. I was too probably self-absorbed in what was going on in social circles I ran in and stuff. Well, after I ended up back, after I tried college, and I was just like, I don't know if that wasn't for me. I wasn't mature enough at that time, and ended up back in that small town. And now, that being said, to go back, let me step back just a second, is that, I was a fan, but I didn't have that. I hadn't gotten it yet. And so like I bought Born in the USA. I remember dancing in the dark, wearing out that 45 before the record was released. I bought the record the first week it came out, drove up to San Antonio and bought it. And then I remember buying the live 75, 85 album set the day it came out. And because I'd heard all the stories, I'd never seen Bruce live at that point, but I'd heard all the stories about how great he was, and and it had Because of the Night and Fire, and I knew those songs by Patti Smith and the Pointer Sisters. So I was dying to hear his original versions of those songs. So I got it, and I liked it, and I listened to it, but I still didn't get it yet. And it just so happens to be I was back in my small town, and I was getting real tired of what I would hear then and in those days on the radio. And it was just all it was the same. And then I happened to be one night, I was at my parents' house, and I caught the Born to Run official video. I think they were running it on Entertainment Tonight or something like that. And I got to see a clip of that great, I don't know if I'm sure you've seen that video. It's phenomenal from that, and it captures the, footage from all over the world on that tour. And that was like a spark to me. So then I was like, I need to go re-examine. And then I started listening to everything that I had on hand, and then I got it. And I must have worn Darkness on the Edge of Town out because it resonated to me at that time. Here I was in a small town and I felt like, oh, what am I going to do? Anyway, so that's kind of what it was, that spark that changed everything. And that's when I decided to join the Navy, and it really when I say life changing, I mean it. It really was. And in that being said, I went back then, and if I didn't have the record, I went and bought it. Like I had already bought Greetings back when Born in the USA had come out, but I didn't have Wild in the Innocent yet, so I didn't know how great that record was, and I didn't have Nebraska, but I had everything else. So this was '87. Early '87, and then that was all I listened to for months. And then I enlisted in '88 and went and joined the Navy. But that I guarantee you, I probably wore my friends out because that was all I listened to. And also, that being said, I went back and got the Dave Marsh books. At that time, he had Born to Run and Glory Days. Went back and read those like within a matter. I think I finished them in each book within a few days. And subscribe to Backstreets. And then next thing you know, right as all this is happening, Tunnel of Love comes out in the fall of '87. And I remember Brilliant Disguise. I was just like, oh my gosh. So I was, like I said, I was hooked. Yeah. And have been a fan ever since.
What about it? I mean, what about that video spoke to you so much?
Just seeing, for one, I'd seen at that time, I don't know how many concerts I had been to.
Sure.
But just seeing the passion and the fun they were having.
Yeah.
And then, the footage of the crowds, it's just, you could tell it was something different. It was just something different. And I couldn't wait then to see him. And I was lucky. I saw him in Austin on the Tunnel of Love Express tour. And which was first time to ever see him, and it was everything I ever imagined it could be. And from then on, like I said, I've seen almost every tour. I have my regrets on missing a couple. The Seeger Sessions tour I would have loved to have seen, but I don't even know, did he I was in the middle of other stuff going on, but in hindsight, I'm like, God, I wished I could have seen that live. And the Devils and Dust, I didn't get a chance to see. I think he played Grand Prairie, up near Dallas for that.
So that was my second time seeing him. My first was The Rising. That was the first
in Dallas.
Yeah, in Dallas.
I was at that show.
Yeah, so that was the first time. I'm similar to you, right? I was a casual fan, and bought Born in the USA, Tunnel of Love, the box set, certainly remember that. Then kind of our son was born in '89. And I got very involved in the local music scene, Sarah Hickman,
Sure.
Combo.
I've actually seen Sarah Hickman.
Yeah. So
saw her at the Majestic in San Antonio. It was part of I think it was a Habitat for Humanity show that she had done with Tish and Ahosa and some others.
Yeah, we ended up becoming friends with her. And so, in fact, if you go to Equal Scary People, her first album she has a lot of people she thanks, but she has Jessie, Linda, and the baby, because Linda was pregnant at the time.
Very nice.
So, I kind of was aware of Bruce, but not really, and then after 9/11, and they were on that, that telethon afterwards, that fundraiser, and I heard them do My City of Ruins.
Remember watching that too.
Yeah, and I went, oh my goodness. And then seeing him live, I went crazy.
Right.
So the Seeger session, I don't remember came anywhere close to Dallas, and I didn't, in Texas. And so I didn't make
Right.
the trip to see it. And then
Right.
once the live in Dublin came out, I went, okay, I wish I would have gone and seen that.
Right.
Yeah.
Same here. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was so good.
Yeah.
So then I
So
I
always like to preface this, Val, not to cut you off, but you're about to tell me a story and I want to hear it. But I always like to preface the amount of times you've seen Bruce is not a fair barometer of how big of a fan you are.
Right. No, I agree.
Because of exactly circumstances you and I, right? We're in Texas.
Right.
He doesn't always like, it would be one thing if we if he did do San Antonio, Austin, Houston, Dallas, 3 of the 4 every tour. Oh, okay, I can wrap up some, I'll save my vacation days. I'll eat bologna sandwiches for lunch and try to save my money. But you have to go a little further. Have you counted how many shows you've gone to?
I believe I'm about at a dozen.
Okay.
I think I know I'm double digits.
Okay.
So I was lucky enough to see, I saw the other band in Dallas in '92, December of '92.
Oh, that would have been nice.
And I enjoyed it. I thought they were great. But I remember one of my friends that went with me, he really loved those he really liked. I guess he was one of the rare folks that probably liked Human Touch more than Lucky Town. Okay. But he went to that show and he loved it. But he was like, he goes, so you say the E Street Band is better than this? And I was like, well, I don't know if to me, yes. I can't say what's better to anyone else, but to me, yes. And I said, I'll let you gauge. I believe they will get together sooner. One of these days. I said, you got to go with me to see the E Street Band, and then I'll let you judge. And anyway, so he got to see that Rising show, and he was just like, okay, yeah, I get it. It's just that camaraderie.
It is.
It's so different. It's so different. And the power of Clarence in those days was, he'd blow you out of your seats, So I got to see Ghost of Tom Joad in Austin, spent the night outside Waterloo Records to get tickets for that, and got pretty good seats. 9th row center. I'll take those any day.
Sure.
And then Joe Ely came out and they did a song there in the encore. And Joe Ely, here again, to go back to your point you were making about how many times you've seen them doesn't translate. You're right. Because, to that, a lot of your Texas artists, I've seen, so many. Joe Ely, I've seen, because he's around all the time. Yeah. Alejandro Escovedo, Robert Earl Keen, Lyle Lovett. I've seen all of them so many times. Other folks don't get that chance to. Doesn't mean they're not as big a fan.
Yeah, in fact,
they just don't play around here around where they live all the time.
Yeah, so like if someone asks me what's the artist you've seen the most, and it would be Sarah. Because when Sarah was starting out, she played every Monday night at Club Dada in Deep Ellum in Dallas. And this was before we had the kid.
All right.
And so I can't believe we did this, because my 62-year-old body cannot even imagine doing this. But we would get home, Val, from work, and we would eat a quick dinner, and then we would lay down and take like an hour and a half nap, and then would go to Deep Ellum because her show would not start till 10 p.m. on a Monday night. And we would watch her go till midnight and then come home and go to work the next day. And we did that every Monday night.
Right.
Because, we, and now then I can't even think of doing that. Right.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Same here. We were lucky. We got to see Lyle Lovett at Green Hall last week?
Yeah.
I believe, or a week before last.
Yeah.
And on a Wednesday night. And it, we don't have children. My wife and I don't, but it's still, it's like, God, I don't know how we used to go to so many shows back. And I can remember before I was married, like I remember driving up to Austin during the week, and I would have to be at work at like 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Or actually earlier than that, really, when I worked in the dialysis field. And I would go up to to Cactus Cafe, and I saw Alejandro Escobedo there during the week, and the late Jimmy LaFave there during the week, and it was, you're young, you can do those kinds of things, and in the course of all that, getting back to the Bruce's influence on me, years later, I learned I brought one of his songbooks, and I learned. In fact, it was the big songbook that he had, can't think of, Complete or whatever it was called. And I learned, I taught myself how to play guitar. And then I was in a band for a little while. So I would have band practice, after like late at night, and have to be at work at 5 a.m. And I don't know how I did it. different young body for sure.
Yeah. Dude,
and anyway.
So, favorite shows? Do you have some stories from favorite shows of seeing Bruce?
Well, yeah, yes, I do. I've got the reunion tour, and it was my wife's first time to see him. And this was back before there was a pit.
Yeah,
it was, you still assigned seating, and she actually got us 6th row. We were right in front of Clarence at reunion. And and of course, you're going into that, you were never certain. I mean, I believed they were going to get back together, but I just didn't know when. So when they did, and we were able to see them, and that show was so great. I'm with you. The Rising, that tour was so powerful for its own reasons.
Yeah.
And then, so those two always stand out. And then for a different reason,
at the Rising show, that was my first show. Don Henley came out, right?
Yes, right.
And so that was really cool. And then my second show, the
Magic.
No, my second show was the Grand Prairie one.
Right. Devils and Dust.
Yeah, and damn it, why am I drawing a blank on who came out? Someone came out. And I'd have to look it up now. He did my Oklahoma.
It's Jimmy LaFave.
Yeah.
That was Jimmy LaFave.
Yes, it was. So when I went to my third show, I was like, oh, who's going to show up? Because forget this is what Bruce does. He does,
right.
And so
John Bon Jovi.
Yeah, he did Bon Jovi. That's right. Yep, he did that. So when
I was at that show too.
Yeah. And so when he was in Nashville, I just knew, all right, Roseanne Cash is going to come out. Someone is going to come out. And of course, no one came in Nashville. So I was like,
oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Now, what tour was that when you saw him in Nashville?
It was the High Hopes, because he did.
Oh, okay.
He did the free show in Dallas.
I was at that.
Yeah, that was a fun show.
It was.
Yeah, it was a shorter.
It was a cold, miserable day.
Yes.
But we got there. We fought the elements. We were there early. We got up, left San Antonio at like 4 a.m.
Yeah.
To get up there and claim a spot, and we were there the entire day. Yes. And it was worth every penny.
Yeah, it was. Same thing. My buddy Sam and I got there early, and we stood in line. We got in there, and then I learned really quick that I am not a pit person. I need to sit down, I need to sit down between shows. So Sam, I said, hey, go enjoy. So he was in the pit the whole time. I went and found a spot near the sound thing where I could sit down, and then I stood for the whole Bruce show.
Right.
But yeah, and Robert Lewanski, who is at the time was the Dallas Morning News music critic, wrote a really good article that he said that based on the intimacy, because there wasn't as many people as they thought was going to come because
of the weather.
Yeah, because of the weather, and the energy of the crowd, that he says this may be the best Bruce show he ever saw. Just because of that thing. I know it was great. I know that
it was.
When they came out to Sweet Georgia Brown, and when they opened with Jump, I was on Twitter at the time, and I said, who had Jump on their, and had someone tweeted Bruce, busting brackets all over, which was funny because of the March Madness connection.
Right, absolutely. Because that's why he was playing. That was not on my Bruce cover bingo card at all.
No,
I was stunned when that was what they broke into.
Yeah, and they did a great version.
Oh, sure. And we were so that being said, we got there, we were right down in the very front for that. And I remember, because there was the video, I think you can watch the entire show on YouTube still.
I think you can.
There are shots, you can actually barely see my wife and I, if you're looking from Bruce's angle out.
Yeah.
We're down to his right, right there along on the barrier, and you can barely see us. And so, and here again, and then we drove home. We didn't spend the night. We drove back to San Antonio. And
that's a long day.
That's a long day. It was almost a 24-hour day. But like I said, he's the only artist I would do that for. And we'd do that again. We'd do that again for sure. And so then we saw the High Hopes. No, I didn't get to see the Wrecking Ball tour. I saw the High Hopes tour.
Well, he didn't come anywhere close on the Wrecking Ball tour, right?
Or we would have gone. We would have gone. And then on the River Revisited, I have family. I have a first cousin and that lives in Oklahoma City. So we didn't do the Dallas show. We went up to Oklahoma City because it was like on a Sunday night. The show was. And so we went up there, saw them, and for the weekend, and then flew back to San Antonio Monday morning. And of course, that was a dream come true for me, because I would have said, back in those, when darkness, hit me so hard, I would have probably said The River was the second favorite record at that time. And so a lot of those songs that he rarely plays, to get a chance to see them, was and one of my cousin's really close friends, maybe his best friend, I'm not sure, he's a huge fan as well. And we were both like in tears, just like in the middle of Meet Me in the City. We were already crying, we were already just like, wow, we're getting to see this, so. It was great. Like I said, I've never had a bad experience at any. Well, it wasn't a bad experience because of the show, but the working on a dream tour, we were lucky. Again, we got tickets. We were drawn. We were in the lottery. We got to be in the pit. We were hands on the stage close. My wife got sick, and she had to go. She went, found the medics, and anyway, she was vomiting, and she'd gotten food poisoning, we believe, from somewhere we'd eaten in Austin. And Austin's a hard ticket always, because of they use the UT Ticketmaster. So, and scalping was always terrible in Austin. So anyway, that being said, I didn't get to stay for the entire show. I got to see a handful of songs, and then I was too concerned with her. And then when I found out how ill she was, I'm like, well, we need to go. And so we left.
You're a good husband.
I wasn't. Well, that's what I keep telling her.
Yes.
And I was not happy about it, but there was no way I was gonna not. There was no way. There's just no way. So
that's great. What is your thoughts on Letter to You and Western Stars?
Oh, well, Western Stars is I'll talk about it first, since it came out first. It might be I think it will go down as one of the best things he's ever done. I think it is a classic, and I love every bit of it. Wore it out. Letter to You, I felt the same. Not quite. I mean, I think Western Stars, it struck me because it was so different, and and the orchestration and everything about it is just like, it's a beautiful record. From the album cover, I mean, beautiful record. Letter to You, I appreciated, because that normally in the old Bruce days, he would have sat on that, and it might not have come out at all. And so I was so glad that he put it out, and I love it. I love it. Of course, I'm biased,
Sure.
but I love it. And there's a lot of songs on that record that I hope he doesn't shelve. I hope he plays live, because I think a lot of them will translate very well live. But so I liked them both, but I think if I had to pick between the two, me personally, I think I would pick Western Stars. And I realize now we're probably not going to ever get to see those songs live, which is kind of unfortunate. I mean, other than the movie, we're not going to get to see them live in person. I don't, or not in that version.
Yeah.
He might rework them up somehow or another.
And I'm into, like, I watched Little Steven's film doing, Tucson Train. I'd love to see, any of those songs with the E Street Band. I would be happy with. You're right. We may get one song.
Right.
I think, if we get, when we get a new tour, my hope is we'll get several Letter to You, but we just don't know. Right.
Right. And and my attitude with that is, I personally, I mean, I don't care.
Yeah.
I just another tour and being able to see them again that's what's most important.
Absolutely.
And I mean, I'll take what I get.
Absolutely.
Happily.
Me too.
But I mean, if I had a say in it, I would love to see, I said that same thing about some of the High Hope songs.
Yeah.
We met a really nice young lady from Chicago. I believe she was in medical school.
Okay.
That had come down for the Dallas, the Final Four, that show. She'd come down from Chicago for that. And she was young too. So I was impressed that she was a Bruce fan, because I always, when you find younger folks that are into them, like the older folks, it's great. It's refreshing. And we were talking to her while we were waiting to go in, and my wife and I, and we were both like, I would love to hear, a handful of songs off of High Hopes. And I think he might've played one. And so for Letter to You, yes, I would love to. I mean, he could play almost that entire record and I would be satisfied. Probably the entire record. I don't think he will, but also going back to what you said, if there is one song on Western Stars, Tucson Train is the song I think that totally it's got E Street Band written all over it. They could come out and nail that, nail it. But I don't know. You never know. Bruce changes things up so much, and I mean, if I had a request about the next tour, I personally, and I know I might be in the minority here when it comes to other Bruce fans, I would rather not have the signed song request portion. I would rather him have his set, come out and play his set, and then if he does see that, maybe include him in an encore or something like that. But don't interrupt the flow of come out focused, because like the Rising tour was, and Tunnel of Love tour that I saw, when they come out with a purpose, it's a totally different vibe. I mean, I enjoyed the whole request portion, but I don't necessarily feel like I need to have that anymore personally. Like I said, other folks may feel different.
No, I think there is no right, there is no wrong. It's just like what, like I have told the story multiple times on the podcast. I'm still bitter that on the Houston stop at High Hopes, they were gonna open with This Is Your Sword, and that's the song that I wanted to hear live, and they went, wait a minute, we're in Houston, let's do Seeds. And I'm like, and the last time he was in Houston for I can't remember if it was Working on a Dream or Magic, because one of them he did Houston, one of them he did Dallas, but he opened with Seeds. I'm like, I've already had that checked off. So I get it. Go ahead.
I was to say, and that now to that point, and this was the realization that hit me on the Magic tour when he, because he had a focus set, right? There were only certain portions of that set where he would switch songs up, but for the most part, he had a set list that he pretty much stuck to. So when the reunion tour, he did Meeting Across the River and Jungle Land. And then I believe he did those back to back just like that. Yeah. For sure he did Jungle Land. I can't remember if he did Meeting Across the River or not. But I remember I was standing there and I was just kind of like, well, I was hoping for something else. And then I got to thinking, hey, dummy, this is Jungle Land.
Yeah.
And then I was over it pretty quickly. I'm like, what am I doing? This is Jungle Land. I'm going to complain. No. So, but I'm with you. I get exactly what you're saying. I do have, I've got my one, what's elephant? What's the metaphor? I've got my one song White Whale. That's it.
Yeah. That's the Moby
Dick. I knew it was a big mammal. But so, yes, for me, it's Backstreets. I've seen every song off of Born to Run. Some of them multiple times. I've missed Backstreets every time. And I believe when I was in Oklahoma City, I believe he played it in Dallas, and I believe the High Hopes tour he played it in Houston.
Yeah.
And I didn't go to the Houston show.
Yeah. That Houston show was really a good show.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of the video from it, and I bought the
archive. Yeah.
Yes, I bought that. And it was one of the shows I was like, well, I've got to get this show because sounded like it was pretty cool.
Yeah. I've had the Flores brothers on the show, but they were the two young guys who got on, that
yes, they were great.
They were I've often said, if you want to see a definition of joy, watch those two guys singing, and
I've seen that you've had Matthew.
Yeah.
How do you pronounce the last name?
Alcon.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he was phenomenal as well.
Yeah, he was.
He was very different reasons though. I mean, he was very talented. And not that the Flores brothers weren't talented, but their exuberance is what makes it so
exactly.
special.
And I've got Matthew coming back on. He's talking, he's now got his own YouTube channel and he's working on an EP and he's got his own music he's working on. So I've got that episode in the can recorded. So let's talk about that. Not only Backstreet, but are there other wish lists? Are there other on your bingo card that you're chasing?
Sure. There's three that stand out above anything else. I would love to have an E Street. I would love to see it. I know he hadn't done it often. I would love to see an E Street Band version of Across the Border, because that's another song that, growing up 100 miles. And, we had a lot of folks, Mexican national, or not national, but I don't, I'm not going to say, we had a lot of folks on the ranch where when I was real young, the ranch we lived at, we had a lot of folks. My dad was fluent in Spanish. We had a lot of folks that lived out there that were, and so they were some of the spouses of the folks that worked for my family were my babysitters.
Right.
So that that song's always just hit really hard. And like I said, I've gotten to see him play it solo on the Ghost of Tom Joad tour. But I would love to hear a band version of that or see it. And then the other, Real World, him on the solo piano version is one I would just like, I'd melt. That's so good. And then Back in Your Arms is another one. I haven't been fortunate enough to see that. And that's I could name probably 50, but those are the big ones.
Okay.
Those are big ones right there. For me.
Anything I should have asked you that I haven't? Are there other stories did you end up going to Austin for the book signing?
No, I did not. Work conflicts. And I also missed, I tried to get tickets when he did the South by Southwest show, and he did the what's the term? He was the
keynote speaker.
Honorary keynote speaker. Yes, I know. Of course, I've watched that. I've watched the video. A year.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so good. And but the thing with South by Southwest, if you're not involved, if you're not in the media or you have a media pass, or you spend a lot of money for whatever those to buy the passes, it's kind of those are hard to get tickets to. And it was a lottery. I think that was the only way you could get tickets to that, or get in to see if you weren't media or part of the event. It was a lottery. So I wanted to go so bad. That would
have been fun.
Yeah, but anyway, so that's probably I forget about that show. That's another regret that I missed that too. But it was kind of out of my control on that one.
Yeah, I didn't even try. I knew that was just
right.
The odds of getting that are just low.
Exactly. Exactly. And in a perfect world, nowadays, chances are if we had done that, let's see, that was 2012.
Yeah.
If there's a good chance that would have been, you would have been able to watch it online. It would have been streamed.
Yeah.
And, so it was a little ahead of the whole streaming thing, and which is unfortunate because, that would, like I said, that would have been a show I would love to have seen. And you might can see, handheld videos on YouTube. I don't know. I just, some of those, the quality is just not very good.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, sometimes I'll check them out anyway, depending.
Yeah.
Anyway, so was that? Did we get off topic? What?
No. I just was. Is there any stories that? That I haven't asked you that I should have. I don't, having lunch with the E Street Band, or
I hadn't got that. I've never really got the closest I ever got, and I kicked myself, was the other band in '92. We'd gotten down to reunion early, and there was a lot of people waiting. They had the ramp that would lead underneath the arena,
right?
Where the talent or the either the players or the Mavericks or whoever.
Yeah,
that was the way they would get access. Well, a lot of folks were waiting at the top where the vehicles turn in to go down, and we were stopped, like, what's everyone doing? We're waiting for the band. And I was like, oh. So we're sitting there, we said, well, we'll wait a little bit, we're a little early, and we were meeting someone there, so we couldn't wait very long, but we could have waited longer. And the band, so the vans pull in, and you see the van with the band go by, and then you see another van behind him, and it's just Bruce, and you can see Bruce and Patty.
Wow.
And we were like, oh wow, there they went, and we were like, wow, there they, that was kind of cool. So we were like, well, let's go up to the front or wherever we were going to meet. Here again, this is pre-cell phone,
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So we go up and go to meet anyway. As we're waiting, then we see some of those people come back, and they're just giddy, and we're like, what happened? What would? And he walked all the way up from underneath the arena all the way up to where they were at and talked to fans and signed their stuff. Wow. And I was like,
oh, how funny.
It.
Yeah.
And so that's as close as I've ever gotten.
Yeah.
And and of course we were hopeful. I've been to the Shore 3 times. My wife and I, we just went. The most recent time was it was for her birthday in 2019, pre-pandemic. And so we were at the Shore, and we were like, oh, maybe we'll run into them. We went to Freehold. We, did all the sites, the Belmar, and then hung out at Asbury Park and just kind of did sightseeing stuff. And we were like, oh, it'd be so great to run into them, but we weren't lucky enough.
Yeah.
And so, if it's meant to be, it'll happen. But I'm not at this point in my life. I don't really expect it to happen.
Yeah, gotcha.
And that's fine.
Yeah. So Val, any final thoughts before I ask you the Mary question?
No, I think we've covered pretty much everything that I thought that I talked to you about. I could probably ask you a million questions too, but you've probably told a lot of these stories. So
no, go ahead if you want. Well, this is I got time. if you
Well,
want to ask.
I was gonna say, like with you, I'm assuming it was the Rising would you consider that your best, the most memorable, because that was your first time to see them?
So the Rising tour is when I went from being a casual fan to a passionate fan.
Right.
I think the Houston with the Flores brothers and
Okay.
and Matt Akon, speaking of, he is the one that had the sign do One Step Up, and they did that
Okay.
band. Yeah, he did that. But I really think the last time I saw the band live, we had ended up, my son and I flew up to New York to do it was the end of the River Tour at MetLife Stadium.
Oh,
And
nice.
it was the second night, the night where the couple got engaged on stage, with
Right.
Jersey Girl. So I think
Right.
it was almost a 4-hour show. It was the first
Right.
time, Val, where I was satisfied. I
Gotcha.
had gone to all you can eat Bruce buffet. I had no regrets. I was like, this was perfect,
Right.
and then
Right.
so that's probably and I don't know if that's because it was the last time I saw him. I did get to see him on Broadway. I was lucky enough to get
Oh, good.
Broadway.
Yeah. See,
Yeah, but
we were gonna try to do that too,
yeah,
it's just, it was one of those things that cost wise, it was just, we were like, we'd love to do that, but
yeah,
and we had something else going on right around that same time
yeah,
that was going to be a conflict too. So it was just going to be two. And I was like, let's just hold out hope that the band, they'll do a tour and we'll be able to batch maybe a few shows.
Yeah, exactly.
If we're lucky. So we decided to pass, and we'd watched the Netflix thing. So I'm like, I know it's an experience. I know, in fact, that friend that I was telling you of, my cousins that was the big fan in Oklahoma City, he was lucky to see the first run.
Yeah.
And I mean, he just raved about how wonderful it was. And I can only imagine.
It was amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
What else, sir? Anything else I can answer?
I'd had a question
because I'm like you. I always love talking Bruce to anyone. I mean, that's why I do the podcast, right?
Sure. Yeah, and that's more power to you that you do this, and it's great that you do this, provide this for a lot of the diehards and maybe even not so diehards.
Yeah.
I'm sure, Jesse, there's probably going to be something else, but now, off the top of my head,
I may hit you up in a month or so, and we may do this on a Saturday morning with our coffee, and we may just do a political rant,
sure.
because I'm right there with you. I get so frustrated at times with like, yeah.
Well, I'm just embarrassed by a lot of this nonsense that.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Absolutely. All right. If you are a friend or family member of Val and you're listening to the episode, thank you so much. I hope you check out some of the others. Val did proud by you guys. So I end every episode with a Mary question. So what that is Jay Armstrong, who is a retired English teacher, has a new book out, Bedtime Stories for the Living, where he would spend 2 days in his honors English class breaking apart Thunder Road. They would look at all the lyrics. They would talk about the imagery Bruce uses. They would talk about the themes of the song. He would compare it to Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken, among other American poets. And then at the end of the 2 days, he would ask his class the question, does Mary get in the car? So Val, that is your question. Does Mary get in the car?
No, I've given this a lot of thought, and being an optimist at heart, I would probably have always said absolutely. And I used to would think, and I think that's probably, I think that connects to Moonlight Motel off of Western Stars. But then I also started looking at it differently, and there's probably been other folks, and I might have heard someone else. I don't know if I thought of this on my own. I might have heard someone else discuss this.
Okay.
And I agree. I also look at it as we're merry, the
Yes.
Bruce fans, and so yes, we took that ride.
Very
We
nice.
climbed in, and we're still along. We're still part of that journey, and so that's, to me, that holds true, I think, as much as anything else. Now, whether or not he meant that when he wrote it back in 74 or 5, I think today, boy, it holds that meaning for sure.
Well, and it goes back to when he did the VH1 Storytellers, where he said, was I thinking this when I wrote it? Was I meaning it? But I was feeling all of it.
Right.
So I think that well said. So you mentioned you're not on a lot of social media, but you do hang out on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle?
It's Cool Rockin' Daddy. And I have, I don't know if it matters or not, if you search for it, I really don't know, but it's, I got zeros in place of the O's and numbers in place of the vowels. So I've got a 1 in place of an I, no G, and then Daddy, I have a 4 in place of the A. And that's it at Cool Rockin' Daddy.
Okay. It's almost like it's your password.
Yes.
So very nice. I will find that, and I will include that in the show notes. Talk to me, any final thoughts?
Well, hopeful that we're getting a tour. I worry, and I mentioned this, my wife and I have discussed this. We worry that if he does any shows in the fall, I mean, there's a chance maybe, but I think they would be probably US shows. But I worry about him going, or I worry that part of the factor with going overseas, I know he likes to start tours there or get overseas pretty quick. I just worry that, with his mom's health, I worry about him wanting to get too far away. And I think, so I think that plays into their touring plans. And I respect and admire and love him for that. I'm hopeful that we get to see one here before long. But he's got to do what's best for him and as well as all the band and their families and stuff. So I'm hoping this pandemic I don't think it's behind us necessarily, but I'm hoping that it can be managed way better now, and that it's not going to shut things down. Let's hope. Man, I hope more folks go get vaccinated, and then maybe it can go away. If that's the only way it's going to go away, is if you get more people to finally decide, hey, when I was a kid, I got vaccinated, and I didn't have a choice, and you know what, I lived.
Yeah, exactly. Well said.
The government didn't track me.
Yeah, exactly. Very nice. All right, listeners, go get vaccinated, go get boosted, and let's try to be kind to each other as we get through this, because that's the only way we're going to make through it. Thank you, Val. Thank you, listeners.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Goodbye.
Bye.
I want and need your feedback. You can reach me multiple ways to tell me what you like or don't like about the show. You can reach out to give me guest suggestions or maybe to join me on the podcast yourself. We're on Twitter at SetListingBruce or at Jesse Jackson DFW. I have an Instagram, SetListingBruce or Jesse Jackson DFW. Our Facebook page, facebook.com/SetListingBruce. Go to patreon.com/SetListingBruce to find out how you can support the show, and we have several tiers of support. Please go to your favorite podcast player and hit subscribe, and tell a friend about the podcast, because that is the way we're going to grow.
If you're not tired of hearing me speak, you can hear me on Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast, where Charles Skaggs and I talk all things Doctor Who. The How Many podcast, where me and my friends Gary, Scott, Bob, and Jr. talk pop culture. And finally, my newest podcast, The Last Best Hope for Conversation, a Babylon 5 podcast, where Karen, Lou, and I are going through the TV show Babylon 5 one episode at a time. I am always looking for guests, so please reach out to me, setlustingbruce@gmail.com.
You just heard the fun talking, hard rocking, music loving, album ranking, fan thinking, joy spreading, lyric reading, story sharing podcast that is the one, the only Set Listing Bruce. The theme for Set Listing Bruce was written by David Rosen, used by permission.